Welcome to the show, Christine. I'd like to start by having you introduce yourself and tell us about your book and why you wrote it.
Hi, I'm Christine Sadry, and I wrote the book 13 Years Lost. I wrote it because so much happened in my life, so many things that I had to overcome, so many difficulties, even as a child, that at some point I felt I had to write it before I died. I know it sounds terrible, but it was like so much happened and I've overcome so much that it was so important to get the message out to women. And actually, I was doing like a little book club thing, and a lady was passing by. This just happened recently. And we were a group, and we asked her to take a photo, and she was interested in the book. And so one of the ladies gave her my book, and she just wrote me a few days ago a message. Thank you for having your book. Reading it changed my life. And it just warmed my heart. It because there's so many messages there that no matter how difficult your life is, we as women can overcome and be stronger and still manage to make a great life.
Nice. So the story of it is I'm going to read this subtitle here. So an unbelievable story of fleeing communist Poland and traveling the world serving the United Nations.
Yes.
Yes. So tell me about that. So what is kind of you talked about this book being kind of inspirational to women. Uh, so how does that story relate? Like, tell me about that story and kind of
Okay.
what you were sharing.
Well, I was born in Poland behind the Iron Curtain during communism. And my mother died when I was 5. My father left, and there was 4 girls. He sort of just left, abandoned us. And I ended up being with my grandmother. My 3 other sisters were taken with aunts and uncles. And, you know, from having a normal family life, here I was with my grandmother. And she used to talk about America. I guess she had some family or whatever. And she used to tell me about what a great country it is and all these things. And even as a 7-year-old child, we have an imagination. So I remember thinking about it. And I knew that I was behind the Iron Curtain. And it was like hushed tones. So I used to imagine this. And one day I was in my little village walking down the street, and this man was there visiting someone. And he walked up to me and he said, "Do you want to come to America?" And it was like this light bulb moment came, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is exactly what I've been hearing. This is my moment." So at 8 years old, I went home and I told my grandmother to sign the papers. I knew that, there had to be something to happen. And so at 9, my grandmother, the papers were signed, and there was a friend of my family. Somehow they knew him from another town. They put me in a plane, and at 9 years old, I came alone to America. And you have this idea of life, and with even as a 9-year old, I had an imagination. I arrived at JFK Airport, and there was no one there. The stewardess sat me down. I had this, tag. Actually, the photo on my book is of me, 9 years old. The day I left Poland,
Mm,
and and I'm thinking, oh my God, have I failed? Or there's no one here. What they will do to me? Will they send me back? And finally, about an hour or so later, he shows up, and we go to the house. And, I had my grandmother packed a lot of gifts and a lot of things for my new family. We arrived late. I went to sleep. Well, the next morning I woke up, and everything I came with was gone. Every piece of clothing, every suitcase, every gift. And I remember a chill running down my back, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this does not look good. So there was, but I'm in a foreign country with no language and no family. And my life they were not nice people. It was a very
Mm.
turned out to be abusive, and very frightening. And I was told I would never get in touch with my family again. I was never allowed to speak about them, and I would never see them. So it was, and I didn't speak the language. I didn't know a soul. So, 230 million people, and you're alone in a country, you know nothing. So there was a lot of loneliness and a lot of fear. But I just, I knew I had to do well in school. I knew I couldn't, party or, do be like a normal teenager. And in the end, I did well in school, but it took a long time. But these people, he was physically abusive. And at one point, I know that he had other ideas. Um, but I ended up being a single mother. I had a boyfriend, and back then, I was pregnant. I decided not to marry him because by then I knew that we were two different people. We were together like 5, 6 years. No, we were only together. I was 17 to 19. I'm a mother. And so in the end, we broke up. But thank God I did well in school. I ended up working for the Social Security Administration. And I also wrote to my family in Poland, but the letter was intercepted by someone because I put all my family names. Like I didn't write to them till I was 18 years old because I was afraid. They had put so much fear in me. And in the end, on the other side, there was a girl in my sister's class with the same name and same last name. And the father took the letters and they pretended to be my family. So all these things kept happening, And so finally I gave up on that. And later I get a phone call from Chicago saying, "Are you Christine?" And I'm like, "Yes." "Well, your sister's looking for you." And I'm like, I went through this once. I said, "Well, my sister's looking for me. You tell her to write to me. And it has to be in English because I did speak Polish by then. And I will decide if it's my sister or not. And then I will write back because I wanted to make sure." And so later I get this letter. "Dear Chris, I am your sister Elizabeth. We have been searching for you all our lives. We have never given up on you." And so my whole world just goes upside down after the abuse and after all these things that happened. And it's like you have this dual identity. And in the end, anyway, my family, I bring one sister over, and that is not always the best situation, even though I missed her, but she was not the kindest person. But I
Oh,
ended up,
really?
yeah, yes, I forgot that we didn't get along that well when we were children in Poland. But, I was so happy to meet her. And
Yeah.
yeah, and in the end, I ended up, I had no documents. I had to I wanted to go visit them after. And so I had to search courthouses to see if I was really legally adopted, my naturalization papers. And back then there was no iPad, no iPhone. So, you literally are calling each, courthouse and, "Do you have this name? This is the date." And I was just trying to figure out,
Yeah.
did I exist, legally? But everything worked out, and in the end I wanted to go visit my family, and I it was still communist, so I needed to get a visa and passport, and to go into a communist country was much more difficult. So my sister happened to know someone that was attending the General Assembly of the United Nations. So I went there for him to help me with the visa process. So I could go see my family because you had to go file papers, and it was just, a lot. And at one point I said, "Oh, this is, I was working with the Social Security Administration by then, 6 years. I did well." I said, "This is a nice place to work at." And he said, "Go and apply." No, it's like, no, just, I mean, I didn't go to college because I had to make choices that I would have to leave these people. If they didn't pay for my high school, I had to work at 15. They certainly were going to pay for my college. So, but I applied for a secretarial post and, assistant administrative post. And I ended up working at the UN. I moved to New York, and then after 10 years, doing international conferences, I'm like, I wanted to go to Africa. So they were looking for people to go to for peacekeeping missions. So I got a one-way ticket to Luanda, Angola. And,
Wow.
and I mean, while there, I got held up at gunpoint. Then I was like, I love this life. So, you know, I survived, obviously. Thank God we were military. We were fortunate enough they didn't shoot anyone and they didn't take any hostages. But but it was such a life. You're alive. You're dealing with people. We were dealing with elections and flying on a Russian supply plane, going to the various regions, doing the registration, checking out the voting areas and stuff. So it was a lot going on, and I'm like, I loved it. So then I applied for another mission to Mozambique, where I met my husband. So it's just so many things that, from having such despair and
Yeah.
you know being so alone and just with my adoptive father. I mean, some of the things that happened were, I wrote in the book and were just horrible. But I just you just never give up, and you can make for yourself, if you keep the focus, a good life.
Yeah. So is the 13 years lost kind of that period of time between when you came to the United States and when
Yeah.
you were independent on your own?
Yeah, from 9 to 22. My sister
Okay.
found me when I was 22 years old.
Gotcha.
So it's
Okay.
like, from being a child to an adult. It
Yeah.
was I became identified as a single child in America, adopted, to all of a sudden, like my whole world just blew up, and here I had a whole family, and I, had to learn the language over again. So it was just
Yeah.
so much going on.
There had to be more to that story of being a 9-year-old or 8-year-old, 9-year-old coming home to your grandma and saying, "This man said he'll take me to the United States." Like there had to be more to that you probably knew at the time, right? Like, I mean, you were young and but I can't imagine being in your grandmother's shoes and saying like, "Yep, sign her over," and
I, I I mean, I think my grandmother knew. Like, I remember thinking, if anyone could survive this and do this, it could only be me, you know. And I just felt like it was like my calling, because I heard about it. I was thinking about it. My grandmother gave me this visual sense, that I remember, like, it's meant to be. I mean, this is what I was waiting for. So it was just like, when he said it, this light bulb went off in my head, and I'm like,
Mhm.
yes, this is where I'm supposed to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And so your grandma kind of approved of that, right? So you came over to the United States and then you had there's four girls total, right? So three
Yes.
sisters and you. Now you connected with one of them who came here and then did I hear that you connected with two of your sisters or
Well,
did you reconnect with all of them at some point?
at 22, I received the letter from my sister Elizabeth, the oldest. And so in the first letter, I believe she mentioned, you know, invite Teresa, which is one of my sisters. So, I was so, like, overwhelmed that that's what I did. I was like, because you had to send an invitation, so she could even apply for a visa appointment. It had to be approved. So there was a whole process. So we were connected by letters, but Teresa was the first one that came.
Okay.
And then the following year, I went to Poland. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what they looked like. I just remember the plane landing in Warsaw, and there were these guns pointed at the plane, and I'm like, oh wow, this is who I'm coming back to.
Hmm. Yeah. Did you ever get to see your grandmother again?
She died. She never knew what happened. She died. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about your dad? Did you ever have any closure with him?
Well, I just, I met him, of course, and but I didn't know him. Um, he left when I was 5. I have no memories. I do remember him and my grandmother arguing, but I have, I had never a connection. I never, no, I mean, I have
Yeah.
nothing, nothing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it sounds like part of that message is that, you went through all these pretty horrible things, really. I mean, that's pretty tragic for to lose your mom, have your dad uh kind of abandon you as well, have, your I think your grandmother probably had good intentions, but your grandmother signed you away and you came over here and then, had all these other experiences that were not positive. But through all of that, you kept such a positive, sounds like positive attitude on life, and you were very resilient through all of that, which I think some people could fall into that, victim kind of mentality and not end up the way that you did, but all of that you were really really strong through everything. So it's a great story. Sounds like a great story. I have not read your book yet, but it sounds like a great story that you share. So tell me a little bit about, you mentioned how it's impactful for women. Kind of how does that message, how you mentioned the specific person that said that the book changed her life. So how have you seen that impact the women who have read it, and kind of how do you see that message getting through to women?
Well, a lot of some of the women that have read the book have said to me, I thought my life was horrible, what I had to go through. And then when I read what you have gone through, it's got, by comparison, really not nothing. Even my neighbor, like she's waving me by and say, what am I complaining about? But this woman that we were at the beach that picked up the book, she was saying something that she was in her 30s, she had a child, she had some issues, and I think she was also she came immigrated, I think, from Ukraine, so going through her own stress,
Yeah.
and I mean, she I can even look it up. I mean, it was such a beautiful note that she wrote to me. Let me just see. Here it is. I took a photo of it because it warmed my heart so much. She's like, um, we met at the beach a few weeks ago, and a friend of yours gave me your book. I have thoroughly enjoyed reading it and learning your story, as I can relate to it, so much of it. It truly inspired me to know that I can overcome everything I'm going through at the moment. And then, happy for your success despite the turmoil. It changed my life reading this biography.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I read that and it almost, my heart warmed. I was so touched. And it's exactly what I wanted. Women go through so much, and a lot of times they give up and they just don't see a vision for themselves, and
Mm,
it's so important that women take care of themselves, you know especially financially independent. Like, to me, at 15, I put myself through high school. They were going to remove me from this Catholic school I was going to because it was costing money, and I'm like, okay, I didn't want to get out of not be there. So I started looking for a job. And at 15, nobody's going to hire you. But I found, like, I was tall. So I found this, like, a modeling job a little bit. I did a little runway. And then we were handing out American Express cards. And I put myself through high school, you know. And then I knew there were, college, forget it. I had to get out of that house.
yeah.
So I took courses in high school that would allow me to work, secretary courses, work half a day and go to school half a day. So it was always work, was just, it was the only way to my independence on any level. Because if you don't have money and if you don't see your future, uh, you don't have a life.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a very scary idea. So I think women, it's so important for women to know that it's up to them to make their life. We all want
Yeah.
a partner
Yeah.
to share. We all want to be in love, but thank I get I met my husband later, and even that we were together for many years before we married, and we were both working at the UN, and I knew, we were both focused on the same thing. We loved to travel. He was the deputy rep, he was a diplomat, and I was in the UN working in Board of Inquiry investigations, overseeing them. And so we both, we were in the Congo, we were in South Africa offices, Sierra Leone, Angola, Mozambique. In the former Yugoslavia, I learned how to drive a tank. It was just so many things. But it's so important for women to think of themselves. And
Hmm.
it's such a, I think, difficult, especially when you have children. And how do you walk that very fine line?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. I
difficult.
love how you said that, women can pave their own way or make their own way. They don't have to rely on that person or like wait for that person to come along and,
Save
create,
you.
yes,
Create
save
your
you, create
life.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's up to
Um,
you to create your
yeah.
life. And
Yeah.
we have the imagination. We have all the things that we need to create a life, but we just need to take possession of them. It's
Yeah.
up to us. I always looked at life as a bus. Either you're the driver of the bus or you're a passenger. If you're the passenger, you're going to be driven all over the place. But if you are the driver of that life, which is the bus, you will go where you want to go.
Yeah. I love that. Well, that was a great closing note there, Christine. So I'm going to link to your book in the show notes, but is there any other way that listeners or viewers can find out more about you and connect with you online?
I have a website, christinesadry.com. And there's videos of me doing the launching of my book, and just talking about my book. And there's a link to Amazon, because my book is on Amazon, as well as Barnes and Noble, which I will be there here in Fort Myers on the 22nd of June, signing books. So I'm out there. And on
Great.
Instagram, Christine Sadry.
Great. Thank you, Christine. Thanks for coming on and sharing your story, and thank you for writing your book.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
Looking for a community of women writers to support and inspire you on your journey? Join the Author Power Circle. Connect weekly with fellow authors, stay accountable, and move your book forward in an encouraging community. Learn more at kellyschuknecht.com